From Gallatin County to Scott County, we're your home for country favorites. 95.3 WIKI, Carrollton, Madison.
The following program is paid for by the Rick and Rick at Night Show.
I love that music.
Oh, me too.
This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're the voice of liberty here in the Ohio River Valley. Bulldog, this is a special night for us, as yesterday was Memorial Day, and we went to an exceptional service over at the Veterans Cemetery. I like that Brigadier General. I told him, I said, that was the best the Memorial Day speech I've ever heard.
You know, a great speech, and I know there's a lot of citizens out there that really honor our fallen soldiers that maybe weren't there. But I didn't start going till 3 or 4 years ago, and I would recommend anybody to go to that ceremony out there at the Veterans Cemetery. It's unbelievable. Great job by all.
It's humbling. This is the Rick and Rick at Night Show. We'd like to shout out and express our true thanks to our friend Doc and DuPont and so many others who have served our country so valiantly. This is a conversation we hope you will join. But tonight is another hybrid situation in which you can send questions via Facebook on Rick at Night Show. For the next hour, our computer whiz Lisa is manning the computer right now. We're also taking calls on 812-801-3064.
That is a local call for people here in Jefferson County as well. So it is not a long-distance call for anybody within Jefferson County.
But we know we have people from across the country listening.
Oh, yeah, far and wide.
And it's going to cost you.
Exactly.
Rick, you want to introduce our first guest?
Well, our first guest has been patiently waiting on the phone. I want to say we're really excited to have Alan Caruba here tonight, Rick. Michael Levine has described Alan Caruba as one of the greatest interviews on radio. So we're going to find out what he's talking about. Alan is the founder of the National Anxiety Center, a clearinghouse for information about media-driven scare campaigns designed to influence public opinion and policy. A veteran public relations counselor and professional writer, Caruba has emerged as a conservative voice through his weekly column, Warning Signs, posted on the center's internet site, www.anxietycenter.com. And Alan resides in New Jersey. He is formerly served in the U.S. Army, has been an advisor to corporations, trade associations, universities, and others who continue to utilize his public relations skills. Alan, you know, I could read your whole resume here, but we've only got half an hour.
When you're just shy of 75, you've got a hell of a resume. But let me make one small correction. My blog is not via the Anxiety Center. It is anybody can reach it. It's just http:// Not Fantasy, one word, Facts Not Fantasy, blogspot.com.
Well, and Alan, since we asked you to be on our show, which was about a week ago, I have explored some of your blogs. I just want to recommend it to people that they read these. Very pertinent to what's happening today. The word that catches my mind are the words media-driven scare campaigns.
Yeah.
We know the media has a bias, or at least us on the right know they do. When you say media-driven scare campaigns, can you give us some examples here lately of what that might be?
The classic is global warming. We're all going to die. There was all that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We're all going to die.
Well, I was going to die of global cooling, I think, when I was about 16 years old. I remember back then they were saying that was what was going to kill us.
Well, the simple scientific fact, and I've been a science and business writer my whole life, is that the climate moves in cycles. When people talk about climate change, it's kind of a silly thing to talk about, because the climate for the Earth, which is 4.5 billion years old, has been changing since there was an Earth. The climate changes all the time. It moves in known cycles. And as far as the Ice Age is concerned, which probably gets to you in Ohio before it gets to me in New Jersey, we are at the end of what is known as an interglacial period. That is to say, between ice ages, it's normally about 11,500 years. And we are now at the end of that 11,500 year cycle. So yes, there is a distinct likelihood that it's going to get real cold in Ohio.
You know, Alan, the thing that bothers me, and I think a lot of the people that are pushing this, namely, probably the most famous one is Al Gore. You know, deep down, I think Al Gore knows this is a scam just as much as you and I do. But explain what it is. In my mind, I know what I'm thinking, but what you think the government is trying to do with pushing this global warming and changing, adding all these regulations to our energy companies and pushing green energy companies. What is the end game for these people that are doing this to us?
The end game is to cut down the world's population. If you regulate the sources of energy, like those that provide electricity and fuels for transportation, if you reduce their capacity to do that, you're going to end up killing a lot of people, because just the whole society and the way we function will not operate. In point of fact, this whole global warming thing, it came out of the United Nations. That's where it basically was planned and pulled off, and there's something called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that's been at this kind of thing since the late 1980s. They are now completely discredited. I mean, scientists around the world have just basically said, well, we're not going to believe anything these people have to say anymore, because it's all baloney. I wish they had spoken up a lot louder and a lot sooner, because we've all been living with the global warming scare since the late 80s. And beyond trying to reduce the world's population, because the folks who claim to be environmentalists do not like humanity very much. They don't like people. You know, you can go and check their quotes and what have you. They consider humanity a cancer on the earth. And so they're not nice people.
Alan, this is Rick Roos. Stephen Malloy, who runs the Junk Science website, he wrote a book, Green Hell, How Environmentalists Plan to Control Your Life and What You Can Do to Stop Them. It seems like, to me, it really doesn't make any difference what kind of energy solutions are made, that the true environmental wackos are going to sit down on any kind of solution, whether he was using the example, you know, that we're going after dinosaur oil, and but whether it's solar or nuclear or anything like that, they're going to put a number of obstacles in front of getting anything, so we get, you know, cheap energy sources.
Well, of course, a really successful society is measured by how much energy it uses. So that's a good thing. But what we have as a solution to the horrible carbon dioxide problem, which is not a problem because it doesn't exist. Carbon dioxide, by the way, is what it's food for vegetation. Every tree, every blade of grass, all the crops in the field, anything that grows out of the ground thrives when there's more carbon dioxide. And by the way, more shows up after an ice age or after a major climate change. It doesn't show up before and make it happen. It's purely reactive.
But Alan, not to interrupt you, but it is listed by the EPA now as a pollutant. Isn't that correct?
It is, and that is a huge
a building block of
lie.
life.
That is just a lie of the worst kind. But what do you expect from the EPA? These people are basically climate Nazis. You know, though, you write something to one of their officials that they don't like, and you'll have two guys from the EPA with the local sheriff show up on your front porch. They're really totally out of control.
Well, you know, they're pushing this renewable energy so hard, and I know we had this issue with the city council. We had a green energy company wanting to come to town, and they really had no track record. And I was on record as saying green energy doesn't work. Well, I was probably wrong. It probably does work, but the problem is, and if you can explain to the people, let's say we go to wind energy, how many windmills and how much land does it take? If you know, I know you probably have an idea.
You have to carpet every mountain in America to get any kind of decent output from wind energy, and the same with solar energy. Together, combined, it only produces just barely 3%.
Yeah, I think what I found, and I figured we would have to have windmills covering our whole county to generate the same kind of energy that our power plant. We do have a power plant here in town on the river to generate that kind of energy that one power plant does. Not to mention that, Alan, I don't know what's it cost, 5 to 10 times as much to generate that power from a windmill than it does a power plant.
Windmills are notoriously unreliable. They break down, and of course they're just Cuisinarts as far as the bird population. Birds and bats they just kill off thousands of them wherever they're out and around. It's an industry that would not exist without government subsidies, government loans, and most of all, local mandates, state and county mandates that say you gotta have a certain amount of electricity generated by wind and solar. Without those mandates, and without the subsidies, and without the loans, you would not have solar energy or wind power because it's so impractical and useless.
Well, to the listeners out there, we see dozens and dozens of green energy companies going under. Even with these subsidies, they still can't make it. And a good example is Solyndra. That's the whipping child. $535 million. But there's tons of other. We had a battery factory here in Indianapolis called Enter One, and they made batteries for electric cars. They had a $118 million grant from the federal government 3 years ago, and they filed bankruptcy a few months ago.
Well, I think most Americans are just beaten down. We've had 3 years of being subjected to all kinds of just a torrent of lies and whatever, and we keep hearing about the battery factory going out of business and going belly up, and the solar manufacturers going belly up. They were never going to be competitive. And who needs batteries for an electric car when an electric car costs between $40,000 and $100,000 to purchase? It's on the face of it, it's illogical. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, just common sense tells you. But a lot of people, smart people, and I'm not trying to put them down, but they don't do any analytical thinking as far as this goes. They just say, hey, green energy, that's great. It's clean. We need to clean out the planet. And that's about as far as they get with their thinking as far as what's happening.
That's not smart, is it?
No, it's not.
Well, that's the big problem, is that we've got to get people who have basic common sense to stand up and say, well, we've had enough of this. No, we're not going to have this company come in and go belly up in a year and have 10, 50 employees, and then they're out of work again. I mean, common sense has to rule. And, of course, if the company has no real credentials and no track record at all, who wants it?
Absolutely.
Well, common sense, though, I mean, there's a sidebar issue on here, is the number of takers in society versus the number of producers. And it seems to me like things are being set up, well, we get an electric car. Well, we're used to paying, $80 to $100 for a decent, battery. Mm-hmm. And what is it, like $4,000 or $5,000 for a lithium battery for a volt? I mean, but wait a minute. But the government's going to help you buy that car, Alan. I mean, doesn't that sound good to you?
No, it never sounds good to me that the government's going to help me do anything. I want to earn my own living, spend my own money the way I want to. And I don't want the government in my face and in my life beyond having to pay taxes, and I'm not too thrilled about that. My late father was a CPA, and the tax system in America is so screwed up that it's in need of a massive reform. That's part of the problem we're having.
I want to get into that, but I got to say that we're talking to Alan Caruba here on the Rick and Rick at Night show, and you can send your questions via Facebook, via Rick and Rick at Night, as well as we're taking calls at 812-801-3064. That's 812-801-3064. Just a little bit more on the energy. I read a Washington Post piece last week by Mark Thiessen, and the title is "Forget Bain, Obama's Public Equity Record is a Real Scandal." And basically you have crony capitalism run amok.
Well, crony capitalism is a big problem, and it's been a big problem for as long as there's been a central federal government, and particularly one that in the 1930s began to just grow and grow and grow with all these various programs that they invent. The government exists to expand, and the way they expand is to give money away, and we're just bleeding millions of dollars on programs that you don't even know exist. I mean, Department of Interior, Department of Education, Housing, and Human Services. I mean, just millions. It just goes out in the form of grants here, there, and everywhere, and it accomplishes basically nothing. It just sucks the money out of your wallet and mine and accomplishes nothing, but it lets the various government agencies stand up and say, see what we're doing to help people? Well, I don't want their help.
They always prey on the emotions. Alan, Rick Berry again, the diabolical thing about all this to me is, and Stephen Chu is quoted as saying this is their goal, is to make traditional energy so expensive that they make a windmill or a solar panel more attractive to the consumer. We have a power plant here in town. They have rounds of EPA sanctions. They have to do. The latest is a $600 million project they have down at the power plant that they're working on right now. And people don't realize, they think AEP is doing this out of the kindness of their heart. They don't realize that that's going to be reflected on their bill. And mine went up 20% here a couple months ago after a mild winter. So to me, that's the diabolical thing, is they're making it so expensive with that type, with the traditional energy.
That's coercion. That's government coercion.
Absolutely.
And you know, if you're a red-blooded American, you should be, you know, doing what you're doing right now, speaking out against it.
And that's what we do. Hey, Alan, I do have a question from a caller, and that's Melissa from Madison. What is the backroom benefit that the government is getting from pushing green energy, and why do people forget the failure that was Solyndra?
Gee, that's a big question and a good one. The government benefits mostly by just expanding. The more regulation you have, the more requirements for wind power and solar power and what have you. That just means the government agencies involved have to hire more people to enforce the regulations. So they grow in that fashion. Also, we spoke of crony capitalism. These companies kick back a lot of money to whoever happens to be running for office. And we certainly see that with the Obama campaign.
Well, I think I saw that, Red, were 24 of the top 27 executives were bundlers for President Obama at Solyndra. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Now
he's got his base, and who is it? It's people that are lining their pocket at our expense, and when the company goes belly up, well, then they figure out how to skim a bonus or two before it totally dies.
You know, Alan, back in the old days, they called that a crime, didn't they?
It was a crime. It is a crime. It's fraud, but you know, it's in some kind of way it's legitimate because they're seeking a grant from the
There's
government.
always an out, yes.
You know, and it's
free money.
It's legitimate. It's a legitimate business. Well, it is criminal. I mean, if you think about it, all of these windmills and solar farms, or whatever they call them, have to be positioned miles and miles and miles away from where the electricity is delivered. Moreover, what most people don't know is that there has to be a traditional coal-fired or gas-fired or hydroelectric. There has to be a traditional source of electricity generation for every one of these wind farms and solar farms. They cannot be trusted to provide electricity under the best of circumstances. And of course, if the wind isn't blowing, they're not really up to speed. And if the sun happens to be nowhere in sight because it's nighttime, then you get a little less electricity.
That moon power doesn't
and
work.
that from the moon power, right? And on top of all the expense of building these things, as I say, you have to have traditional electrical power source, just like you got right there in your county, taking up a relatively small amount of space and delivering electricity to people nearby.
You know, and the sad thing, Alan, is, and I pointed this out at our last city council meeting, the way I understand it with the new EPA regulations, it is impossible to build a new traditional coal-burning power plant. There's no way they can meet the new regulations. So not only are they closing down, we can't build any new ones. And it just...
What does that do to the country? That leaves us energy poor, and it leaves us vulnerable to every competitor in the world, China, India, you name it.
And I would ask, these people that supposedly care about the less fortunate, the poor, these people can't, they have to decide between heating their house and feeding their family right now.
Yeah.
Making it more expensive. I don't get where the compassion is when they're doing this to people. I can't afford it myself, and fortunately I'm not poor. I'm not rich, but I'm not poor, and I don't know how the poor and less fortunate do it.
I don't know either. I've always been kind of middle class myself. I'm certainly not rich, but nobody gets rich being a writer unless they write a really fabulous novel or something of that sort, which I never have done, actually.
This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're the voice of liberty in this part of the Ohio River Valley, and we're speaking to Alan Caruba, whose blog is known as Facts Not Fantasy, all one word. And Alan, I didn't realize you were from New Jersey, but I got to ask you a question. I read a piece by Andrew McCarthy last night on National Review Online, and the title of it was "Chris Christie is Not One of Us."
Yeah, well, conservatives like to fight among themselves.
What's your take?
My take, as someone who's lived in the garbage state now for my entire life, I'm at the garden state.
I was going to say, yeah.
We used to take pride in being the most corrupt state in the Union, and then Illinois came along and took top honor. Chris Christie has reduced the level of taxation. He's forced the civil service unions to be a little bit more realistic in their demands and to participate in their own health and pension programs. He's done a really good job on the basics. Now, I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he is really rootin' tootin' conservative, and I'd vote for him again as long as he wants to be governor.
Getting back to you, I hate to skip around. We got like 8 minutes left.
Only 8 minutes?
I'm sorry.
I'm just getting started. What's going on here?
We'll get you back on. I know that. As far as the taxation, if I'm going to ask you a two-parter. What kind of tax system do you favor? And then getting back, if you were king of the country, and we kind of have one right now, but what would you do to turn the clock back as far as the regulations and whatnot that are killing us?
That's an easy question. First of all, I'd get rid of, if I was king, let me get my crown here. If I was king, I would eliminate the Department of Education and eliminate the Department of Energy, and top of the list, I would eliminate the Environmental Protection Agencies. These have been the most wasteful, retrograde agencies that have ever been introduced into the government, and they are just a roadblock for decent education, which should be at the state and local level, should be controlled there, determined there. And, because we're spending like $20,000 a student, and half of them don't even graduate. 40% of them drop out. I mean, it's a disaster as far as the educational system. But as far as the environment is concerned, it's nothing but pure gangsterism at this point.
How about the tax system? Are you a fair tax guy?
I'm a fair taxer. I think if we had a tax where based on consumption, what you purchased, as opposed to what you earned, I think that'd be a much fairer way for everybody to participate in supporting the government. 40% of the population doesn't even pay taxes anymore, and the president keeps going around talking about millions and billions, and millionaires and billionaires. they're the biggest taxpayers we've got at the present time. And what we really need in America is more millionaires and billionaires. I'm all for success.
Absolutely.
Do I have your vote? Do I have your vote?
Yeah, you got it.
If I move to Ohio, do I have your vote?
Now you're still alive, though. That's
we'll get you together with Chris Christie.
No, the implementation. It seems like, and we had on our show last month Richard Murdoch, who beat a 5-time incumbent.
Tea Party guy.
Yeah, he is a Tea Party guy. The clock's ticking as far as I'm concerned. One, we got to get it right this November, but we got to get people in that understand what this is all about. Who are your other warriors in the country that you're looking at?
I'll just say the Tea Party candidates. The Tea Party is the most remarkable democratic American movement I have ever witnessed, and they're going to elect a lot of really good people, and they're going to go to Washington, and they, by God, better reform things there before we're all out of business in the United States of America.
I liked Richard's tact as far as, and they're calling him a constitutional conservative, because I never bought the compassionate conservative of 43. But,
yeah.
Constitutional conservative, that just explains who we want in there.
That's a good description. If anybody who describes himself, any candidate that describes himself in that fashion, has got my vote.
Alan, we've been doing this show, Rick, for about a year and a half, and this kind of sprung out of a Tea Party thing, a desire to get the word out. With all the guests we've had, most of them say this country is either going to go through one of the greatest growth spurts we've ever seen here shortly, or we're going to go into a dark period. How do you see it?
We just have to get Obama out of office. The man is a walking, talking disaster. He's a Marxist. He hasn't even begun to, destroy and damage the nation sufficiently as far as he's concerned, and his little commie friends. So it's do or die. This is the election.
Well, Alan, I'm not a psychologist, but there's so much evidence when you look into the president's past, his associations. His friends, there's almost no way you can look at you called him a Marxist, and I agree with that. And when you look at his associations, you can't come to any other conclusion. What is it about people that they can block that out and say he's nothing of the sort?
Well, there's about 25-30% of the population that are hardcore liberals. They're not going to let the facts get in the way of anything, because that's what they believe. The liberalism is good and all that good stuff. So let's discount them and think about the other 75%. And I think that there was a battleground poll, and it's been going on for years, where about 60% of the population self-identifies as conservative. So there is a widespread base of people. But the elections always come down to independents, people that identify themselves neither as far left or far right or whatever. And they move back and forth. So this election is going to be determined by whether the independents have decided they've had enough. And I think in terms of all the polling I've seen, I think Obama is gone. He's a goner. He will not be reelected.
Well, amen to that. That's what I'm thinking too. But you always also got to figure in the cheat factor, and I wouldn't put that past him either.
No, I mean there's always been an element of that in the country, but I think there's going to be an army of lawyers at every polling booth in the country to keep an eye on that possibility. Except, of course, for Illinois and Chicago, but they're already probably lining up Rahm Emanuel for a jail cell one of these days anyway. I mean, that's what they do. They get elected, and then They're either the mayor or the governor, and then they go straight to jail. So.
And it's bipartisan because they've got Republican and Democrat governors in
That's
prison.
the American way.
Alan, we're really running out of time. You told me you only had enough energy for 30 minutes, but I think you lied to me. I think you got enough energy for a couple more hours. We've got a comment from Ann in Hanover, Indiana, and if you want to respond to it, she says, we need more people who work for a living than those who vote for a living. And that's from Ann in Hanover. Thank you, Ann. Alan, what do you have to say to that?
Absolutely. The key factor is we've got to get people back to work. We've got to get government off the back of small business and mid-sized business. Our corporations are still paying the highest corporate tax of any nation in the world. So we've got a lot of repair to do, and God willing, it'll begin on January 20th, 2013.
Alan, thank you so very much for your time. We'll get you back on the show, and we do appreciate it. And Alan's blog is Facts Not Fantasy.
Blogspot.
What? Blogspot. Okay.
Right.
I think they Google you. They got you because that's how I got you. And,
yeah, I'm all over Google. It's disgusting.
And I would like to add, I would say Michael Levine knew what he was talking about when he said you were one of the greatest interviews on radio.
Well, he's the editor of Talkers magazine, which is read by the radio talk show folks. So if Michael has something nice to say about me, I'm deeply complimented.
We really appreciate you being on, Alan. I'll be in touch. We'll get you on again here real soon.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're the voice of liberty here in the Ohio River Valley. And our next guest is Major General Paul VALLELY. Like I said, our Facebook presence is Rick and Rick at Night. And we're taking calls at 812-801-3064. It's long distance outside of Jefferson County, and it is local here in town. So,
you know, Rick, I think Alan would have been a much better guest if he would have told us how he really felt. You know, I think he was kind of hiding something, but boy, actually, everybody, I'm just kidding. But he was a great guest. He told it like he thought it, and that's always refreshing coming from a guest.
That was a remarkable memorial service we went to yesterday.
Absolutely.
We're waiting to get hear from Major General VALLELY. One thing I did pick up from the Major General or the Brigadier General from the Air Force, he did a poem. That's not really a poem, but it was more of a statement from a guy named Charles Province in 1970 for the U.S. Army. And he said, it is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of speech or the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to protest. It is the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. I thought that was remarkable.
It was. And we should give a shout out because it really hit close to home. John Menke and his parents were both there yesterday. It was good to see them. It was touching. And I know Dan, when they played taps, that kind of got to him, and he said it always does, but it was good to see him there. And his son truly is a hero to Jefferson County.
Certainly is. I believe we have Major General Paul VALLELY on the phone.
I'm on. Hi, Rick and Rick. How are you?
Hey, Major General, this is Rick Berry. Can I take a minute here to give a little background on you, and then we'll get going?
That sounds good.
Everybody, Major General Paul VALLELY retired in 1991 from the U.S. Army as Deputy Commanding General, U.S. Army Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. General VALLELY graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and was commissioned in the Army in 1961, serving a distinguished career of 32 years in the Army. He served in many overseas theaters, to include Europe and the Pacific Rim countries, as well as 2 combat tours in Vietnam. Now, most of you know General VALLELY. He was the military analyst for Fox News and is also from 2001 to 2007, and he's also a guest on many nationally syndicated radio talk shows. He is also a guest lecturer on the War on Terror. He has co-authored a book entitled The Endgame, Winning the War on Terror. Major General, it's really good to talk to you again.
Well, thank you, Rick. Happy to be with you.
I also want to mention that you are the chairman of Stand Up America, and I think that website is it standupamerica.com?
StandUpAmericaUS.org.
US.org. And I would urge all of our listeners out there to go to that site. It's really a good one.
Well, we encourage that and get them to join Stand Up America as a member and help us out of getting the word out to everybody in the country on what's happening in the Middle East and also politically in the country. So that's what we do from the Stand Up America platform.
You had a very eloquent Memorial Day message on your website, General. It brought tears to my eyes, but particularly, one of the things you referred to was your son.
Yes.
What happened?
In fact, we had the ceremony yesterday at the cemetery where not only my son, but a number of other veterans from past wars were memorialized yesterday, and it was a beautiful day in Montana to do that. So, looking at other families that have lost loved ones over the years in the service of their country, it's very heart-wrenching for sure.
Your boy's name was Scott, right?
Yes, that's correct.
What happened to Scott?
Well, he was in Special Forces in 2004, and we lost him in a training mission. And anyhow, we keep him alive in our hearts with the Soldiers Memorial Fund, which is also our other way to assist veterans and their families, and that's soldiersmemorialfund.org also that we support throughout the country.
What's your take on what's going on right now, particularly with the withdrawals from Iraq and as well as Afghanistan?
Well, like I've said on Fox News, even from 2001, that this was an unconventional war against an ideological enemy, radical Islam, that we should fight it that way. As I was told by a Lebanese colonel, Christian colonel, a very good man, he said, make sure you tell the generals and admirals, do not put bases into the Middle East. If you see any threats, as you saw in Afghanistan, of the training sites, come in and take them out, but come back to home base. And he said, don't get involved in nation building in the Middle East. He said, it'll just be like a big sponge. It'll suck all the resources, human as well as financial. And that was back in 2002, he told me that. So you see the situation now. We have a flawed policy over there, no strategy to win, and we're utilizing up so many of our precious young men and women, not only being wounded with lifetime wounds, as well as the loss that we've had in the Middle East of life. So to me, we have a weak leadership in Washington, and we need to have new leadership and change direction. And as far as I'm concerned, we look at the threats, we attack them, and we come back to home base. No more nation building.
Is that the lily pad strategy?
Yes, it is.
Can you explain that?
Well, basically, the lily pads, if you could take an aircraft carrier group or ships at sea or some of our bases that are in friendly areas, we can launch against identifiable threats to America from anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. So we don't need to have these bases out there that can't be protected, and that's the basis of the lily pads. Basically, there's the launch points out there where we can utilize the totality of our armed forces, strike the enemy, and come back home. That's what we need to adopt.
And I talked to an Air Force Brigadier General yesterday, and I liked what he said. I like the cut of his cloth kind of thing. He made a disparaging remark about the French, and I picked right up. But I went up to him. I said, "You sound like one of us. Are there more around? You seem like the Joint Chiefs have kind of. I know you got to accede to civilian control, but it just seems like people are rolling over the higher ups of the Joint Chiefs as far as the nation building and just getting in lockstep with it." I mean,
well, first of all, Rick, I mean the armed forces are to protect America and its citizens. The devotion to the Constitution and the American citizens come first, and the inept politicians we have, even going back to Vietnam, and guys like McNamara, should have been put in jail for the decisions they made. So when we look back at history, and we look back from even Korea up to today, where we've had real no victory, that we can't afford the assets of America, human as well as financial, to fight these wars over there if there's no threat to the United States. Now, there was a threat with the camps in Afghanistan, and we took those out. We basically decimated the Al-Qaeda and Taliban in the fall of 2001. But then we go in putting all these conventional forces in, big bases that we have to support, and here in 2012 you see the results of that. So it's not a new strategy that, you know, I just came up with. It's been my thought since the beginning, since 9/11.
I think you have pointed that out the other times you've been on the show. You know, Major General, I don't understand our foreign policy. They still call it the Arab Spring. It's looking more and more like the Arab Winter. But one thing that struck me, and I brought it up on our last radio show, not too long ago, President Obama met with the Muslim Brotherhood in the White House, and he seems to be cozying up to them. This is a group that's committed to the destruction of Israel, committed to the destruction of our Western way of life. Do you have any insight or inside information as to what is going on there?
Well, I think we have a total inept gentleman in the White House is absolutely clueless, unprepared for the world's problems and the U.S. problems. The idea that we, in the last question you asked, we need the military guys to stand up as a group. If they stand up as individuals, then they're asked to retire. But they really need to stand up to the inept leadership of the politicians and get us back on course. And that's why I've called for a national call to action and basically a forward strategy that protects America first, especially our borders, the threats that we have within the United States. Let's focus on getting America strong and keeping us strong for our next generations. And that's why, it's nice to say, well, we have a civilian in control, but the civilians don't know what they're doing at the senior level as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and the problem with this president, we've had presidents in the past that maybe didn't know what they were doing, but their advisors were so strong and knowledgeable that he could survive off that. This president seems to have advisors that are the same mindset he has, and it's just absolutely a dead-end street as far as getting any of this stuff changed.
Well, that's exactly right. And when you look at the State Department, for example, when was the last diplomatic success we had? You look at the senior leadership in the Pentagon. You look at the limited capability that we now have in the CIA. The FBI's got some very good sub-organizations. But as I understand from an FBI agent, Mueller, who's the FBI chief, they would rather hire academicians, people out of the colleges, rather than operators. And that's upset a lot of people in the FBI and the CIA.
This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're the voice of liberty in the Ohio River Valley, and we're just tickled to death to be speaking to Major General Paul VALLELY. General, just more on your call to action. It isn't just to get the military together. What else did you have in mind?
No, it's to get all the veterans, it's to get everybody in their communities and the states to stand up to a very inept and corrupt federal government. I think we need to do that. And, if we can do it through the political process this year, that's fine. But, if we have the same as usual, even Republicans going back in, and then that's not going to help. And I was glad to see your election out there of Mr. Murdoch. I think that's a great way to get some new blood into the Senate. I think it's a great way to send a message to the other states that they have to get with it and get new people back there. The old people, the old blood, is just not working.
I think he's a warrior by your description. He understands what the Constitution's all about, and Rick and I have incorporated warrior in our day-to-day conversations with each other. But Murdoch's the real deal, and we're also really proud of the fact he carried the state was 61-39, and in Jefferson County it was close to 70-30.
Boy, that's exciting. That's really exciting. But we need that new blood for sure.
You know, and you know, Major General, the knock on Murdoch and the knock on a lot of conservative Tea Party people is that they're not compromisers, that they're steadfast in their beliefs and they're not going to compromise. Well, my question to the public would be, why would you compromise your core values? And how do you, like we've been talking, how do you compromise with socialism?
Well, even what I call communism, very progressive. It's just socialism. What we have now, they call it socialism light, or communist light for socialism, I guess, or something like that. But that's what we have. Compromisers, you know, if you look at the situation in Iran, you look at Israel being isolated over there now, and all they think they can do is negotiate with the radical Islamists. Well, their intentions are different. Their mission is global caliphate, the global domination by Islam. And we seem to be clueless in that. Europe is going through a very major transition of the number of radical Islamists that have come into the European cultures now, that they've even had to put a stop to it, like Holland has done. So we have to understand the enemy's intentions, and we have to understand the threats, and then we have to counter them, again, to protect America and its citizens.
And do we not, we need only look at their own words. They tell us what they want to do. I mean, if you go back to 1930s Germany, I mean, Adolf Hitler wrote a book. He said exactly what he was going to do. And it was so horrifying what he said he was going to do. I don't think people took him seriously. And we saw what happened. Well, Ahmadinejad's basically saying the same thing. And history repeats itself. And, you know, people are not taking him seriously either, or a lot of people aren't.
Well, if you look on the Stand Up America site, you'll see the plan that we got out of Beirut, which was the Sharia plan that is on our website. We'll be happy to send anybody that. Part of it's in Arabic, but we got their plan last month of the domination of the Middle East first, then Europe, then the United States. And that's why we've been very much against the mosque going in anywhere, because they're nothing but Trojan horses, where they come into communities, they recruit, they develop their cells to go and to foster the radical Islamic ideology and that interpretation of the Quran.
And, you know, I'd like to say, just like not all Germans were Nazis, most of them weren't, not all Muslims are radical Islamists either. And I'd like to point that out.
That's correct. But the imams, they guide it globally through the internet now. Excuse me, Rick.
Fine.
So when you have all of that going on, you have to understand what their intentions are. And like you've said, they've announced those. It's in their doctrine. So we've got to be a little smarter. We've got to have competent people that can interpret what's going on out there and then take the necessary action, again, to protect America and our citizens.
But it just seems like
we've gone over the cliff so far right now that I'm afraid we're going to have to go through a lot of pain to get America on track.
But it just seems like we've gone so far the other way as far as bending over backwards to be deferential to people that would do us harm. I'm thinking of the prison system. You talk about a prison outreach. This isn't Chuck Colson's kind of prison outreach for the church. It's the imams going in or their minions and recruiting, you know, really not very bright people, but really, really strong, you know, people that would do us harm.
Well, that's exactly right. They've been doing that for decades in our prison system. Now we know they've infiltrated even our armed forces to a degree. We got Major Hassan down there in Texas that hasn't even been tried yet, but yet we've got 3 or 4 of our soldiers in jail for life for crimes that they've accused them of in Iraq and Afghanistan. And here's this avowed Islamist that killed some 13 of our soldiers at Fort Hood, and we have not put him on trial yet. I mean, it's absolutely a travesty.
And that was not called an act of terror. It was, what do they call it? It was, what did they call it? It was like worksite violence or something like that. I think that's what they classified.
Yeah, they had some kind of politically correct name for it. Overseas contingency.
Well, they don't want to create any divisiveness. They don't want to create anything that would show badly on Islam. Now they've taken, I don't know whether you know this, the Army announced that they're going to take out any kind of studies or literature in our schools in the armed forces, particularly the Army, that negates or says anything negative about radical Islam. They can't even talk about it now.
Can this trend be reversed, General?
It can be, and I think we will do this. We'll do it through the elections this year. And I think finally the people, if the economic situation gets any bad, we could in fact face some kind of a revolution in this country. And I'm not sure what it looks like.
I don't think any of us know. You know, Major General, the last time we had you on, you dropped a bombshell on us, or at least it was a bombshell to me, and you said that Iran already had the bomb. Can you expound on that a little bit as to have you found anything else out since we talked to you last?
What was the question again, Rick? I'm sorry.
You dropped a bombshell on us last time we had you on the show. You said that your intelligence tells you Iran already has the bomb.
Right.
Can you expound on that as far as what else you know at this point? I think that was probably about 6 months ago that you told us that.
Well, we knew they do have the capability now from the sources we get, even though the official sources in Washington said now they have enough enriched uranium to build 5 nuclear weapons. We're sure they have the delivery system. They do have small yield nuclear weapons that they can deliver by container ship to the United States.
I've also got a Facebook question for you, and this is from Jerry. He wants to know how the strategy of war changed since you served, and how come our president doesn't seem to get the idea that you play to win.
Well, that's right. He doesn't understand that, nor do any of his advisors. It's pretty sad.
You know, one thing that struck me, General, is, and he gave a good Memorial Day speech, and he praised the Vietnam veterans. He said they were treated poorly when they came back, spat on, and that's true. But the thing that struck me, it was the people of his belief system that were doing the spitting.
Yeah.
That's not quite a sister soldier.
That's exactly right. We've seen that since the 60s. And it's absolutely a tragedy that's occurred, but we have the same kind of thing happening all across the country, and that's not good.
You know, fortunately, though, I think we've got that corrected. I think there is a better understanding of the sacrifice of what these guys do for us. There's all kinds of charities and fundraising systems for them. I think we have learned a lesson from Vietnam. Hopefully, that's one really good thing that's come out of that.
Well, I think so, and I think the vast majority of American people feel the same way.
General,
I'm sorry, cutting out on you a little bit. I don't know whether it's the...
we can hear you.
It cut out a little bit, but I think we're good to go.
You hear me all right?
Yeah.
Good.
This is Rick and Rick at Night. We're talking to General Paul VALLELY from Montana. And General, there was a big to-do about, we're talking about new nuclear weapons from Iran and new nuclear weapons from Korea. But what about the old ones from Russia? Did Lugar Nunn do anything as far as taking care of the nuclear weapons that are ostensibly aimed against us? Now they're aimed away from us or somehow dismantled. Do you have any insight?
Well, the Russians, of course, still have theirs. They would like to see us, of course, downgrade. That's what they've been pushing. We basically downgrade all of our weapons, and they continue to build and help countries like Iran. I mean, it's just unbelievable how naive we become, especially at the national level. And, of course, we know North Korea has been fostering up and supporting their program, also working with Iran. The Shahab-3 missiles came from North Korea, and that's what Iran has as delivery systems now. And then the Scuds from Russia. So as we go down in credibility and capability, that's what the Chinese and Russians would like to see, because that way they gain more power as we come down in power, particularly in the Middle East.
Major General,
so it's like a major chessboard.
Why does our president seem to be giving Russia everything they want. And how did you react when he was caught on the live mic telling Medvedev to wait till he was elected and he would have the flexibility to get things taken care of for him?
Well, you know, the Russians play us very nicely, and Putin and Medvedev, they all know that they can take our president and play him like a toy. So they do it. And, of course, he's not smart enough or intelligent enough in international strategy. He's never been trained in it, never had that as a community leader. And so the people he has in the White House, like Valerie Jarrett, who he listens to on about everything, they have no clue what's going on.
Why do you think
they
he
don't
doesn't
know how to fight these kind of big games, big strategy things in America?
Why do you suppose he doesn't get more advice from his foreign policy expert, Joe Biden?
Well, that's a good question. You know, Joe's the smartest guy in the world, isn't he?
Just ask him.
Just ask him. Boy, I tell you what, you talk about someone that's clueless, it's Joe Biden anyhow. But, you know, there's a lot of others. And I take issue also with a lot of the Republican senators. They don't stand up. They're not tough. They don't realize we're in a battle for America.
Absolutely.
So that's very frustrating.
Absolutely.
I would like to put all of these candidates through about 2 or 3 weeks of boot camp.
Yeah, and
How
most
they can deal with the world today. That's a very tough world out there.
And most of us do what we're doing. We're doing what we're doing right now, for our kids. And a lot of these people have kids, and like you said, they're Republicans, but most of them seem to be blind to the fact that this isn't a game, and it's got to be turned around really quick, or we're in big trouble.
Well, that's right. It's not a game. It's a battle. It's a battle for the future of this country. And that's why I'd like to see him toughen up. Mitt Romney needs to get a little tougher. He can't keep calling Obama a nice guy when, in fact, he's not a nice guy.
Who would be your druthers for his vice presidential candidate?
Well, I think Alan West is very good. He's smart. He would neutralize Obama in any kind of a debate. He understands military strategy. He's very articulate. I think he would be very representative of the new kind of leadership we need in the country. And
he is not afraid of being politically incorrect. And that is absolutely what we need, a guy that tells it like it is. And he does that.
And they don't realize the American people like that. You got to be down to earth and forthright and tough and strong when you have to be. You can't come off like some limpney out of some of these schools that we have around that we're training. You know, boys have to.
I'm going to write that one down, General.
The General's website is...
Am I too over the top?
That's good.
The General's website is standupamericausa.org. And also let our listeners know that if you missed any part of this broadcast, we also have a podcast at rickandrickshow.com where you can catch the General again.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I've got to pick my wife up who just had an eye procedure, so I'm going to have to bow out now. But I thank you all for inviting me on.
Our best to Muffin,
it's our
friend.
pleasure, Major General, and we're going to get you on again, but really appreciate you being on. Okay, and thank Lisa for all she does. We will. Talk to you soon. All right.
Take care, General.
Take care. Bye-bye.
What a patriot.
Well, that's two patriots tonight. Two guys that tell it like it is. And, what he said struck me. Guys are afraid to say stuff. Guys that aren't afraid to say stuff like Alan West, people love that. And we've got people that probably think like Alan, but they're afraid to say stuff because they're afraid of being criticized. Well, the press is going to criticize them no matter what they do. But the General's right. People love that. And if more of our guys realize that, more would be speaking up. But, we had Alan's an author. We've had Major General VALLELY's an author. Oh, Rick, I understand now you're an author. You have got a book out, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell the people out there about your book and how they can...
Sorry, we're out of time.
We do have a book. It's called Seek and Find the Obama Code. It's word search puzzles, Barack Hussein Obama's biggest lies and scandals. It's available at obamacodebook.com. We'd like to thank Tom for running the board and Lisa for monitoring Facebook. And we're going to meet from here. We're going over to the Boneyard Grill.
Christian told me a poor one. I want there you go. But hey, I want to. What a great show tonight, and great guests, and a lot of fun. We just don't have enough time.
Great, Bulldog. We'll be back in another month.
Tom's pulling out the hook.
Good night, Madison and America. God bless and keep you, our listeners, and this the most wonderful country in the world.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of Wagon Wheel Broadcasting, WIKI Radio, its management, employees, or advertisers. Paid for by the Rick and Rick at Night Show.
We've got the Ohio River Valley covered with your country favorites, local news, and local sports.